In my introductory video on the 4 basic styles of thinking and decision making, I described the concepts on which the styles are based and then very briefly gave descriptions of each of the 4 styles themselves. In this video, I talk in more detail about the potential strong points and potential weaker points of each of the styles. I emphasize potential because, as I've said before, styles show their true colors, so to speak, only when they meet a situation. If a particular style fits the requirements of the situation, it's a good match, then you get the stronger points of the style. But if that same style does not fit the situation well, there's a mismatch between the style and the situation, then you tend to get the weaker points of that particular style. Briefly, for example, if the situation is one in which there's a lot of urgency and time is of the essence, then generally one of the more fast-moving, satisfying styles, decisive or flexible, will be a better fit with the situation. And further, if the situation is such that once a decision is made, it's going to be difficult or even counterproductive to change, maybe other people need to quickly take action based upon your decision, then the decisive style will be a better fit, generally speaking, than the flexible style. In this video, I want you to get a very clear picture of how each of the styles is unique and differs from the other styles, and have a real sense of what the potential strong points and weak points are of each of the styles. I'm going to assume that you recall the basic ideas behind the styles, what the 4 styles are. And if you need a refresher on that, I would suggest you just take a quick look back at my introductory video before going into this one. If those ideas are still fresh in your mind, then let's go. As a quick review, as we begin our analysis of the potential strong points and potential weaker points of each of the styles, please keep in mind the 2-dimensional structure of the style model. Left to right, on the horizontal axis, we have on the left the satisfying, fast-acting styles, decisive and flexible, and on the right, the more analytic and therefore potentially slower-moving styles, hierarchic and integrative. On the vertical axis, in the top row, we have the decisive and hierarchic styles that are unifocused, that is, they have in mind a particular objective that is to be achieved in the process of making a decision. Whereas on the bottom row, we put the multifocus styles that have in mind multiple objectives, not just one, when decisions are being made. We begin with the decisive style. That's a fast-acting, unifocused style. We see it up here in the top left-hand corner of the style matrix. The particular value that the decisive style potentially brings to a situation is that when a person is in the decisive mode, that person tends to be more task-oriented than ego-oriented, keeps the eye on the task at hand, is always willing to pitch in, keeps the team on track if the person is working in a team, and also has high loyalty to the team or the team members. The decisive thinker tends to be a good timekeeper because they hear the tick of the clock more loudly than do other people who are less time sensitive. In a crisis, the decisive style is indispensable for taking action quickly to act upon whatever the crisis at hand is. In addition, the decisive style is a good practicality watchdog. When decisions are being made, if the decisions and the logistics tend to get too complicated, the person who's a decisive thinker is likely to be the first one to call attention to the impracticality of the decision being made. So those are the potential strong points of the decisive style. Like any style, the decisive style has potential liabilities, potential weaker points. Number one is that the decisive thinker is likely to prematurely close down the decision-making process. That's an issue, particularly if the decision is a complicated, multifaceted kind of thing. If others object, then the decisive thinker can become withdrawn or perhaps combative and pushing back hard. The decisive thinker can also be a bit too formal at times and distant, especially if that thinker is the team leader. Decisive thinkers are often seen by their colleagues and coworkers as poor listeners because they're pushing to get on with things rather than exploring more deeply. They tend to rely heavily on formal authority and rank. Those factors make a difference in the decisive frame of mind. And implicit in what I've just said is that a decisive thinker is unlikely to be favorably inclined to get into a lot of complex details and tasks. So you can see that those liabilities are going to be potential weaknesses in situations where the decision at hand is going to be a rather complex, multifaceted thing where there are lots of points of view that need to be taken into account. Next, we come to the other satisficing style. We see it on the lower left-hand corner of the style matrix here, the flexible style. The value that potentially flexible thinkers bring to the decision-making process is, number one, they're highly cooperative. They're not stuck on any one particular solution or course of action. In fact, they can easily tolerate diverse views and opinions. And likewise, they tend to be responsive to others' input, ideas, and feelings. They are quite willing to share recognition and give recognition to other team members. They don't stand on formal protocol. They will behave in whatever way they feel is appropriate given the particular situation at hand, and they're not likely to proceed on the basis of prior rules and policies. They're also very comfortable with loose structure and loose rules. On the potential liability side, the flexible style is uncomfortable with long meetings. They want to get on with things just like their decisive counterparts. They don't like to get into complex, detailed tasks. They are quite likely to object to anything they consider to be, quote, over-engineering. They are not comfortable with conflict. And if they get into disagreements and conflicts, they're likely to go along, even if they don't intellectually go along or try to sweep the conflict under the carpet rather than confronting it directly. In so doing, they may focus a little bit too much on short-term issues and short-term solutions. And probably the biggest, most common objection that others have to the flexible style is that the flexible thinker, because they can see many possible avenues and options, tend to be inconsistent and too changeable. The next style is the hierarchic style. As we can see here, it's in the upper right-hand corner on the maximizing side of the style matrix. The particular value that the hierarchic style brings to the decision process is, number one, as being an excellent source of expert information. They value information and they value expertise, and they are likely to build up a good store of information themselves. And in the decision-making process, that can be indispensable. They also help to structure complex tasks and discussions to bring about a logical order in the analysis and the attack on whatever the issue at hand is. In fact, they're a very good focus watchdog. If things start to go off in too many different directions, they're likely to call attention to that and try to bring the focus back to the central issue and the central criterion that needs to be met in the decision-making process. They're not bothered by debate. In fact, they're quite comfortable getting into debates that others may see as arguments. But in their point of view, they're simply pushing to get things right and exploring the issue in a more logical way than some of their counterparts would be inclined to do. In this process, they're quite likely to keep the eye on the big picture and the essential criterion that needs to be met in the decision that's being made. In so doing, they're good organizers. They stay on top of logistics. They tend to structure things in a very logical manner. On the liability side, the hierarchic style may over-control the process. They're dedicated to getting the highest quality decision that it's possible to get. They get the right decision. And once they arrive at an opinion or a solution themselves, they're likely to push that and be seen by others as pushing their own position. They can be prone to excessive debate, at least in the eyes of their coworkers and colleagues, especially those that have a more multi-focus orientation. They can take up a good deal of airtime themselves and fail to take in a lot of the information and comments that their colleagues and coworkers bring. And in so doing, they may be considered to be poor listeners. And allied to that is that they can be seen as insensitive to others' feelings and views. They may try to overstructure tasks and solutions at times, and they like to take personal credit for decisions that are being made, and others can see them as trying to take too much of the credit. The last style is our integrative style, and that's the one you can see here on the lower right-hand corner of the style matrix. The particular value potentially that the integrative style can bring to the decision process is number one, in a team situation, they're naturally attracted to teams because they enjoy the diversity of ideas and opinions and possibilities that are brought up in teams. They value other people's input and ideas. They also can be great at stimulating creativity and seeing things in a way that other people have ignored because they're quite likely to keep their, as I say, peripheral vision wide open. They can see possibilities that are different from those that others have considered and suggested. They're not going to stand on precedent. They're a good source of ideas and information. They may not have the deep expertise of their hierarchic counterparts, but they're going to bring in a lot of ideas and information. And they're also likely to listen well, at least compared to the other styles, because they are naturally attracted to the information and diversity of views that other people will bring to the table. Often you will hear them combine their own ideas with other ideas that other people have suggested, and saying something like, I can see how if we take your idea and Joe's idea and put it together with Sally's idea, we can come up with a very unique solution. They tend to also be aware of group process. If other people are falling out of the process and inclined to remain silent, that's going to bother them. They're going to want everyone to contribute. They will want to hear from everyone in a team or a group process. They don't stand on protocol. Again, that's much too structured and much too rigid for an integrative thinker, and they're very comfortable with a lack of formal structure. On the other hand, the potential liabilities of the integrative style are, number one, they can overcomplicate even a very simple issue. They can cause the team to lose focus because they're always seeing other issues that could be closely linked to whatever the issue is at hand. So they don't like to narrow things down just to one criterion. In their mind, there are always other connections that need to be made, and they will resist closure if a decisive counterpart is trying to close down the conversation. You can be sure that the integrative is likely to be the one who's likely to keep it open and say, but wait a minute, there's another issue that we need to take into account. They also at times can get into playing a kind of devil's advocate role where they may come up with opposing points of view and opinions to wherever the team is going. And it's not that they're actually against what the team has come up with or the course of action that's on the table. They're just testing to see what happens if they suggest that there may be other possibilities or that the one way the team is going is too restrictive. In the process of overcomplicating things, as integrative thinkers can do, they may overwhelm their colleagues and coworkers with too many points of view, too much information, too many ideas, and of course that can cloud focus as well. Practicality and time consciousness is definitely not a strong point of the integrative style, and in some circumstances can be an important liability. They can miss deadlines. They are very cooperative in that they're open to a lot of different points of view and they're willing to combine their ideas with others, but they may be slow to respond, and sometimes that could be seen by other people who are moving faster as being resistant. So there you have it. Hopefully now you can see the truth to my assertion that there's no such thing as a good style or a bad style in any absolute sense. But that doesn't mean that styles are unimportant, though. Far from it. When there's a good fit between a style and the situation, everything falls into place. Things feel natural, it feels smooth, everything's in sync. But when there's a mismatch between a style and the situation, nothing seems to work well. Everything seems out of sync. Things seem unnatural. In my video on situational fit, you'll see in more detail what I mean. And you'll probably recognize in your own experience situations where your style may not have been in sync with the situation you were in. And likewise, other situations where everything was just very natural and smooth for you as well. So keep the potential strong and weak points I just discussed in mind and aim to get those potential strong points and hopefully learn to adapt your style to the situations you face. I'll have more to say about that in another video as well, so stay tuned.